Companies buy AI licenses, roll out training, celebrate completion rates, and then watch the same teams copy data by hand, chase status updates in email, and rebuild reports every month. That's the waste pattern. The tool is there, the spend is real, but the work barely moves because the old model tracks exposure, not change. A badge doesn't tell you if a finance analyst closed faster. Attendance doesn't tell you if a project manager pushed a blocked decision through in half the time. And if you can't show reclaimed minutes, fewer errors, or faster action, AI stays a cost line. So in this video, I want to make the measurement model simple. Time saved, speed gained, error reduced, not in theory, inside real tasks. That's where ROI starts to show up. The old model breaks. Why certification metrics don't show ROI? Most AI training programs still follow the compliance model. People attend a session, finish a module, maybe pass a quiz, and then leadership gets a dashboard full of neat numbers. Completion rate, participation, self-reported confidence. It looks tidy, and that's exactly the problem, because tidy metrics can hide messy reality, especially when the work itself hasn't changed at all after the training ends. What typically happens is simple. A team learns what a prompt is, sees a few generic demos, and then goes back to Outlook, Excel, Teams, and reporting workflows that still run the old way. The person may know more about AI than before, but the monthly report still takes too long. The handoff still breaks. The follow-up still depends on someone remembering to send it. So the gap isn't knowledge alone, it's task behavior. And one level deeper, this is where most firms lose the plot. They measure usage noise instead of work compression. Research in your source set points to a huge spread between typical users and power users, around 4 to 5 times in productivity. That means average adoption numbers tell you almost nothing. A company can say people are using AI and still miss the fact that only a small group is turning that usage into faster output. That's why completion rates feel safe but don't prove value. They tell you somebody finished training. They do not tell you whether a reporting pack moved from 20 minutes to 45 seconds for part of the process, which is one of the finance benchmarks in the research. They don't tell you whether employees are reclaiming around 9 hours per month on average, which shows up across multiple Copilot studies. And they definitely don't tell you whether a decision now moves 8 times faster or whether time to insight dropped by 88% in a measured implementation. Those are outcome signals. Everything else is setup. There's another break in the model. A lot of pilots never establish a real baseline, so they can't prove change later. Research in your material shows 95% of enterprise AI pilots delivered no measurable P&L impact. Not because the tools failed on their own, but because organizations skipped the hard parts: workflow redesign, ownership, and pre-hire post measurement. If you don't know how long the task took before upskilling, you can't defend any claim after rollout. This clicked for me when I looked at how leaders talk about adoption. They often ask, how many people used Copilot this month? That sounds reasonable, but it's the wrong question. The better question is, which task got shorter, cleaner, or faster to decide? Because using AI more often is not the same as compressing work. A person can prompt all day and still create rework, delays, and weak outputs that someone else has to fix. So training has to move out of the generic literacy bucket and into role-based capability, not learn AI. Learn how to build a variance explanation faster. Learn how to turn meeting noise into action-ready follow-up. Learn how to cut ticket handling time without hurting quality. Once you drop the badge logic and move into workflow logic, ROI gets a lot easier to see. The measurement model, the reclaimed minute framework. So once you stop measuring training as attendance, you need a model that ties behavior to money. Keep it plain. ROI equals time saved multiplied by hourly cost and adoption rate, then add the value of fewer errors and faster decisions and subtract the upskilling investment. That's the whole structure. Not perfect, but usable. And that matters more because most AI ROI discussions collapse when the math gets too abstract for managers to trust. Put even simpler, you're not buying AI, you're buying back work hours, and you're trying to move those hours into work that matters more. Analysis, planning, escalation, customer response. Better judgment. If the hours disappear into slack time, the value weakens. If those hours return to the business as faster output or better decisions, the value shows up. Start with reclaim time because it's the cleanest signal. Measure hours saved per full-time employee per month, but only inside named workflows. Not AI helped a bit. That's useless. Track one task, cleaning data in Excel, drafting a monthly variance note, building a meeting summary and action list. Then compare manual time against AI-assisted time under the same conditions. Same role, same task, same level of complexity. That's how you avoid fantasy math. The thing most people miss is that averages can distort the picture fast. One person might save 15 minutes, another might save 2 hours. So don't begin with broad assumptions across the whole company. Begin at workflow level, then roll upward. If a finance analyst saves even a small amount on a task repeated many times each month, the reclaimed hours compound. Research in your source set shows that even modest monthly savings can justify the license fast when the employee's hourly value is high enough. Then add decision velocity. This one matters because a lot of AI value doesn't show up as simple labor reduction. It shows up as less waiting between issue and action. Measure the cycle time from problem identified to next decision taken. In some teams, that means from meeting to follow-up. In others, from variance flagged to management response. And because this is easy to fake with vague stories, use pre-training and post-training timings. Same team, same type of decision, same approval path. You've got support for that in the research. Some organizations reported decisions 8 times faster and time to insight down by 88% after AI adoption. Now, you shouldn't throw those numbers around as universal promises because they depend on the workflow and the setup, but they do show what happens when AI reduces the friction between information gathering and action. And that's the part executives care about because slow decisions usually cost more than slow document creation. After that, choose one more metric based on the role. Error reduction works well in finance or compliance-heavy flows. Throughput works well in service or operations. Cost per decision can work for management processes where the same issue keeps dragging multiple people into the loop. The point isn't to create a giant dashboard, it's to match one quality or output measure to the workflow so speed doesn't hide bad work. Now, baseline discipline. This is the part almost everyone wants to skip because it feels boring, and that's exactly why so many ROI claims fall apart later. Before training, time the task, count the rework, capture how long the handoff takes, then run the same test after targeted upskilling. If the task changed, noted. If the volume changed, noted. If the data quality improved, noted. Clean comparisons protect the whole case. Adoption still matters, but as a multiplier, not a trophy. A license that sits idle drags the model down. Research in your sources shows active seat utilization in large enterprises averages 55%, which means a lot of paid capacity never enters the workflow. So don't ask only whether users logged in, ask whether the trained behavior showed up repeatedly in the target task. That's the adoption signal worth tracking. And one more distinction matters. Gross time saved is not the same as value created. If an analyst saves an hour, that hour only matters when it moves into deeper analysis, faster escalation, better planning, or more customer work. So the full model is really this: reclaim the minute, then redeploy it. That's how AI stops looking like software spend and starts looking like operating leverage, but where ROI shows up first, the 3 roles with high ROI density. Once the model is clear, the next question is where to start. Not with everyone, not with the loudest department. Start where work is repetitive, document heavy, and packed with small decisions that slow everything around them. That's where AI upskilling compounds. You train one behavior, it shows up dozens of times each week, and the gain keeps stacking without adding more headcount. Finance analysts sit near the top of that list because so much of their week runs through structured data, recurring commentary, reconciliations, and reporting cycles that punish manual effort. They live in Excel, they clean inputs, compare versions, explain movement, and turn raw numbers into something leadership can act on. That's exactly the kind of work where role-based AI skills can cut drag fast, because the friction usually isn't deep judgment. It's the work before judgment: gathering, shaping, drafting, checking, rewriting. In the research, finance teams report strong monthly savings, and some pilots show reporting work dropping from long manual cycles to much faster first drafts. That pattern matters more than any one headline number. Analysts don't stop being analysts. They stop spending so much time building the first version of the output. When that shift lands well, you see a real reclaim of capacity, often in the 30% to 50% range for targeted tasks, and close cycles start moving with less scramble at the end. Project managers are another dense ROI zone, but for a different reason. Their work gets buried under coordination load: status collection, meeting notes, action tracking, risk logs, follow-ups, stakeholder updates. None of that is trivial, and all of it creates delay when information sits in chats, decks, or half-finished notes instead of moving into decisions. So when PMs get trained to use AI inside the workflow, not as a side experiment, the gain shows up in flow. A weekly prep cycle that used to consume 6 hours can drop to 2 when summaries, action extraction, and draft updates happen inside the tools they already use. More important, the output arrives in a better state for action. People don't need to reconstruct what happened in the meeting. They can see the risk, the owner, the deadline, and the next move. That's why decision cycles can move 25% to 40% faster in these environments. The speed doesn't come from typing quicker. It comes from reducing the lag between discussion and execution. Then you have frontline operations and support, where volume does most of the economic work. These teams handle repeated questions, repetitive communications, knowledge retrieval, case summaries, and constant switching between systems. Small savings matter here because they happen all day. If a support workflow drops from 12 minutes to 7, that gap repeats across hundreds or thousands of interactions, and suddenly throughput climbs without the usual answer, which is hiring more people. This is also where quality pressure gets real. The team can't just move faster. They have to stay within target, stay accurate, and keep response quality stable. That's why these roles benefit from tighter prompt patterns and narrower use cases early on. Draft the response, pull the right knowledge, summarize the case. Let the human confirm the edge cases. When that discipline is in place, throughput gains in the 20% to 40% range start to look believable, not inflated. So the selection rule is simple. Don't spread training evenly across the org because that feels fair. Put it where AI compounds output through repetition, documentation, and decision load. Finance gives you measurable compression in analysis prep. Project management gives you faster movement through coordination. Operations and support give you volume gains with clear service metrics. Different roles, same pattern. The work moves with less friction because information arrives closer to decision ready. And that's the lens to keep using as we move into examples, because the signal gets stronger when you stop asking who used the tool and start asking which workflow got shorter. Proof in the workflow, 3 concrete before and after cases. So let's get specific, because this is the point where AI ROI either becomes defensible or turns into boardroom fog. Take finance first. Before targeted upskilling, a monthly reporting cycle can stretch across 5 days, not because the analysis itself takes 5 days, but because analysts spend too much of that time pulling numbers together, checking formatting, drafting commentary, and writing the same style of variance explanation again and again. The trained behavior changes that sequence. Instead of starting from a blank page, the analyst uses AI to draft the first pass of commentary, summarize movement across categories, and structure the explanation for review. The close doesn't disappear. The analyst still validates the numbers. But the manual drag drops and the cycle can move from 5 days to 2. The real gain is what happens next. Those recovered hours don't go back into prettier reporting. They go into scenario planning, exception review, and faster follow-up with decision makers. Now look at project management. The baseline problem usually isn't lack of effort. It's fragmentation, notes in one place, actions in another, risks buried in a meeting nobody has time to rewatch. A PM can easily spend 6 hours a week just getting status into a usable form. After role-based upskilling, the workflow changes. Meeting notes get summarized in a consistent pattern. Actions are pulled out with owners and deadlines. Risks and blockers surface earlier because the PM isn't reconstructing them manually after the fact. That prep time can fall from 6 hours to 2, and the bigger win is downstream. Escalations happen earlier. Stakeholders get updates that are ready to act on. Fewer decisions stall because the follow-up arrives late, incomplete, or unclear. What changed wasn't the PM title, it was the speed at which information became usable. Then there's support and operations, where the math gets very visible very quickly. Start with a common case. Average handling time sits at 12 minutes because people search for the right answer. Write the response from scratch, summarize the case, and then move to the next one already behind. After focused upskilling, the agent uses AI for draft responses, faster retrieval from approved knowledge, and structured case summaries that reduce repeat searching. Handling time can drop from 12 minutes to 7. That matters on its own, but the stronger signal is service stability. More cases get resolved inside target. First response quality improves because the answer starts from a grounded draft instead of rushed manual writing. And the team gets breathing room without adding headcount. Across all 3 cases, the structure stays the same. You start with a baseline task. You train the behavior inside that task. The workflow gets shorter. Then the freed capacity moves somewhere useful. That repeatable structure matters because it keeps the business case honest. You're not claiming magic. You're showing where time went, what changed, and what the team did with the gain. The external benchmarks in your research back that pattern without replacing internal proof. Across Microsoft Copilot studies, users report average monthly time savings, and a large share report getting to a good first draft faster. In measured deployments, teams also report faster time to insight and better decision speed when AI is tied to a real workflow instead of floating as a general use assistant. Those benchmark signals are useful because they show your internal result isn't isolated, but they should support the case, not carry it. And that's the discipline leaders need. Don't ask whether AI touched the process. Ask whether the process now moves with less delay, less rework, and better use of skilled people. In each of these cases, AI didn't remove the role. It removed the lag between information arriving and action starting. That's the upside. But it only holds if the system around it is controlled, because once outputs drift, sources get messy, or people start improvising in high-risk workflows, the apparent gain can vanish under hidden correction work. The hard line: governance that protects ROI. Now, the part a lot of AI content skips because it sounds less exciting than productivity gains: governance. But if you leave this out, your ROI model turns soft fast, since bad outputs create hidden review work, weak decisions, and risk nobody priced in at the start. Begin with the data boundary. AI should work only with approved data sources, under clear access rules, with inputs people can trust. If the source is stale, messy, or pulled from the wrong place, the output may look polished while still pushing the team in the wrong direction. That's expensive, not always in a visible way, but in second checks, rework, delayed approvals, and lost confidence. So the operating rule needs to stay simple: controlled data in, reviewable output out. Then keep the human in the loop where accountability actually sits. AI can draft, it can summarize, it can suggest patterns, but approvals, exceptions, and final decisions still belong to people. That isn't caution for its own sake. It's how you protect decision quality while still getting the speed benefit. Especially in finance, project risk, customer cases, or anything with regulatory consequences, somebody has to own the judgment, not just the prompt. This is where use case tiering helps. Low-risk work scales first. Summaries, draft emails, meeting actions, first-pass commentary. Those are good places to build habits because the upside is easy to see and the downside is easy to catch. Then you move into monitored analysis support, where AI helps structure thinking but doesn't close the loop alone. High-risk automation stays narrow and controlled because once the workflow carries financial, legal, or service risk, the cost of a wrong output climbs fast. Without that tiering, companies blur everything together. They treat a meeting summary and a sensitive decision path as if they carry the same risk. They don't, and when people can't see the boundary, they either overtrust the tool or avoid it completely. Both kill value, standards matter too. Random prompting produces random work. If every employee invents their own way of asking for summaries, drafts, and analyses, quality spreads all over the place, and managers end up reviewing style differences instead of business value. Shared prompt patterns, role guidance, and simple examples reduce that drift. Not because prompts are the strategy, but because repeatable behavior lowers rework. Measurement also can't stop after rollout. You need a live view of saved time, adoption depth, exception rates, rework, and any drop in output quality. Otherwise, the early gains can mask later decay. A team may look faster on paper while correction work piles up somewhere else. That's not ROI. That's cost moved into another part of the system. And this is the executive point. Governance doesn't slow value, it protects value from being overstated. Leaders don't fund what feels clever. They fund what they can audit, compare, and defend when results get questioned. So if your AI program can show clean inputs, clear ownership, sensible tiers, and measured outcomes, it stops looking like experimentation and starts looking like operational discipline. Once those controls are built into the model, expanding AI use stops looking like a bet on enthusiasm and starts looking like a managed business choice. Scaling without waste, how to expand from pilot to operating model. After that, the next mistake is scale too early. A pilot shows promise, leadership gets excited, and then licenses spread across the company before anyone has locked the pattern that actually produced the result. That's where money leaks. Not because the tool stopped working, but because the operating model never formed around it. A better path starts small and specific. Pick 3 to 5 workflows for each target role. Not 10, not every possible use case, just the workflows with repeat volume, visible friction, and clear business relevance. Capture the baseline before anything changes. Then train people on the task itself, not on a generic tour of features. A finance analyst doesn't need a broad lesson in AI possibilities first. They need to know how to shorten commentary drafting, how to clean a recurring spreadsheet faster, and how to structure a variance review with less back and forth. Then run short pilot cycles with hard success gates. Did reclaimed hours show up? Did cycle time drop? Did quality stay stable? Did trained users keep using the pattern after the first week? Those are the signals that matter. If active usage falls away or if rework climbs, don't expand yet. Fix the workflow, the guidance, or the manager support first. Growth without that discipline just scales confusion. What helps here is building proof packs that speak the language of each stakeholder. The CFO wants a costed view of reclaimed labor and avoided waste. The COO wants movement in cycle time, throughput, and service reliability. Line managers want to know whether the team can absorb more work, respond faster, or reduce manual admin. So don't present broad vendor claims when you ask for the next phase. Show role-level data from your own environment tied to one workflow at a time. Budget also needs to shift. Too much AI spend still goes into generic certification and one-off training events that feel organized but don't stick. The stronger model puts money into workflow-embedded coaching, shared prompt libraries, and manager-led reinforcement because those are the mechanisms that turn a useful demo into repeated behavior. Research in your source set points in that direction too. High-performing organizations spend more on internal program design and manager support and less on external certification as the main answer. Expansion should follow role clusters and use case tiers. If one finance team proves value in reporting and reconciliation support, move to adjacent finance workflows. If PMs show gains in status reporting and action tracking, move into related coordination patterns. That kind of scaling holds shape. Blanket licensing rarely does because usage spreads faster than capability. And keep one question in front of every rollout decision. Did this change how work moves? If the answer is no, pause. Because profit doesn't come from adding AI access, it comes from changing the path from input to action in a way the business can measure. So the shift is simple. ROI doesn't come from training volume. It comes from shorter tasks, faster decisions, and cleaner execution inside the work people already do. Pick one workflow this week in finance, project management, or support, measure the manual version against the AI-assisted version after targeted upskilling, and watch where the recovered capacity goes. If this changed how you think about Microsoft AI, Subscribe to the M365 FM podcast, leave a review, connect with me, Mirko Peters, on LinkedIn, and send me the next workflow bottleneck you want unpacked.